Hi everybody, I'm Carl and welcome back to Knack 3D Designs. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to install or remove a seamless belt on your White Knight printer. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to secure my carriage up out of the way so I don't have to worry about it slapping into the belt or anything else while we're working. I got a really long zip tie. I am just going to loop it through the carriage or the rail here and lock it in place. Now it won't fall on me. Next thing we need to do, if you've already done it, and you'd be ahead on steps if you had, is I'm going to go ahead and remove the peeler. To do that, the easiest way to do it is to hang the printer just off the end of this box a little bit. Alright, that takes care of the peeler. Alright, now the next step, we need to take off all 4 end caps. Alright, now next thing we need to do is push that front roller all the way back as far as we can so we can remove this rear roller. With the front roller pushed all the way back, you should have just enough slack to get this bearing loose. Pull your bearing pack out, then you can pull your roller out of this side of the stepper mount, pull your belt off, and slide this roller out and set it aside. Set the bearing pack aside and the belt, and then you can shift your belt over and very carefully, whoops, before I forget, disconnect your stepper and your fan. Then you can go ahead and slide out your stepper mount. Now we should be able to slide everything to the other end and pull out the front roller. And while we're up here at the front, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect our panel do display, our stepper, and our Y-axis stop switch. We'll need to disconnect them later anyway. There's one bearing mount. There's 2. And our front roller. Next thing we need to do is we need to remove all the bolts from the bottom of our support brace and our front stepper mounts. Don't forget about your screw right here and these 2 right here. And go ahead and remove your drip tray if you have it installed and get it out of the way. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is we'll need to remove this bottom support bracket. Now, if you haven't printed all your parts, and honestly even if you have printed them all, I recommend finding at least this bottom bracket from the Squire files. It's designed to just slide right over the extrusion instead of sliding up into it, so it'd be much easier to remove on a regular basis if you need to. Now, you should be able to lift this up just enough and pull this out to where you can slide that down out the bottom. Just like that. Set it back in place. Alright, now, the belt can come all the way to this end and swing out. The only thing you will still need to do is, it's very tight right now, but it will probably make it, but I'm afraid I would gouge the inside of the belt. If you take out these two screws on the far side, that'll let that extrusion swing in just a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and loosen these just so it can move. That'll give us the additional amount of swing we need to pull this off. I'm just going to push that extrusion back a little bit. Doesn't need to go back much. Now, if you have someone to help you, at this point I recommend you get a partner to help you out. For me, well, I'm down here by myself right now, and luckily I have a low ceiling. I've made some anchor points. I'm just going to tie a string around the top of my framework here. And hook it through this little loop I've got in my ceiling. Hopefully that's enough to keep it mostly out of my way. And I've rewound this a little bit because I realized we also need to remove the heat plate and shift it back just a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and remove these screws now. What I recommend is just taking your heat plate and folding it back. If you can get it like so. Don't lose your nylon washers. Now, we'll go ahead and get this up off the table a little bit. And we should take the belt. There it is. We'll loosen this just a little bit more. There. Now the belt will swing out like this. And I'll take my brace that way. And there you have a belt off of the printer. Now we just need to reverse the steps to put everything back together. And remember, when you go to put your plate back in place, just a credit card width on each side so you've got an air gap. Now we need to re-secure this bar. Now we can go ahead and install the front roller. And now we'll put the rear roller back in. Remember to go ahead and hook up your, well, okay. Hook up your cooling fan. And we'll wait to hook up our stepper till we've got it put back in place. And now for our rear roller. And now I just noticed my seam is right here, this corner. I don't want to leave it here. I don't want to risk cutting the seam apart. Wish I'd have realized it was there before. Put some stuff here. Break that down just a little bit. Belt. Go ahead and feed it onto the stepper. Up onto our roller before we stick it into the bearing. Come on, stay on there. This is probably the hardest part, is getting this bearing back onto the printer. I'm going to pull this side of the stepper mount as tight back as I can on the belt to give me as much slack as I can. can clamp it in place. There we go. Now that's back in place. We can go ahead and put our 4 end caps back on. Now, once you get your first 2 end caps on, start your first 2 belt adjustment screws, but only start them like a turn or 2 so you have plenty of slack to help you pull it back to the other end. And don't forget to reconnect your stepper motor for your belt before you get it nice and tight and can't reach in there. Alright, so the reason you put these on first is so you have your wider ones. I don't, this is the prototype, but this way you'll be able to slide your whole X and Y axis carriage up against your end brackets before you go ahead and put in all your T-nuts and your screws. So now we need to go ahead and put all these back in. Alright, so now we're going to hook our stepper motor, our Y-axis stop switch, and our panel do back up. And now the last thing we need to do is we need to tension our belt again. I usually crank this side all the way tight. And then adjust this end to get it nice and tight. Sounds pretty close. This is how you install and remove a seamless belt, or your seamed belt if you need to take it off for some reason and work on it. That's how you take it on and off without ripping it apart. And my next episode, we'll put the finishing touches on all the last components that need to go on, and that'll complete the series. Alright, so that wraps up today's episode. Now, if you'd like to help support the channel, future development of the White Knight, and any other future projects, there are several links in the description below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.